What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Let's Talk Nerd, and in this video we're continuing on with our The Mandalorian episode discussions. We are on episode 3 titled The Sin, and there's a lot to talk about. This was a super exciting episode, so let's get into it. Boop-a-doop! Episode 3, super exciting episode, one of my my most favorite episode, or just like any media of Star Wars ever shown to me in my life. It is so good. So as a quick recap is what we saw in episode 1 and 2. We're introduced to the Mandalorian, also known as Din Djarin is his real name. This was introduced in an interview with Pedro Pascal. It has not been introduced into the show. I'm sure later on they will talk about his real name, some more of his backstory, things like that. But just from that interview, we do know his name is Din Djarin. We're introduced to the Mandalorian. He is a bounty hunter, very well-known reputation, which lands him a gig with some remnants of the Empire. Now, they are putting down a heavy payment of Beskar steel, the steel used by Mandalorians to craft their armor. This is a huge deal for the Mandalorians. So with that down payment, he takes the bounty and goes and crafts himself a pauldron with what appears to be the new Mandalore, the leader of the Mandalorians, and we get his first pauldron. He goes to the planet where this bounty is located. He learns to ride a blurg from a Ugnaught named Kuel, super swell dude, little cowboy Ugnaught, who helps him along the way to get to where he needs to go. He takes on an entire militia of mercenaries that are holding this bounty hostage, and teams up with an IG unit known as IG-11, who he soon betrays when it comes time to actually get the bounty, once he finds out that it is actually a baby. None other than a baby Yoda. We get to see that the Mandalorian has a heart. He's not a cold and ruthless bounty hunter like we've suspected, like he's going to kill everything in his way, which he will, but he does have a heart. He feels a connection to this baby. But at the end of episode 1, we're unsure on whether or not he's actually going to, what he's going to do with it. So we continue on to episode 2, and we find the Mandalorian trekking back to his ship after he gets his bounty, because episode 1 ends as soon as he sees Baby Yoda. So he gets back to his ship to find Jawas have stripped his ship clean. They've taken its part. He chases him down but fails ultimately and has to barter with them to get his ship parts back. In bartering, he has to claim an egg from a mudhorn located in a cave somewhere on this planet. In the process of fighting this mudhorn, he gets the shit literally beat out of him until Baby Yoda shows his true force powers and saves the Mandalorian in the process, allowing him to kill the Mudhorn and claim the egg that the Jawas wanted. That was the end of episode 2. Now we were left with the notion that the Mandalorian was going to either turn the baby in or run away with it. So that's what's happened so far. In episode 3, we go back with the Mandalorian to the planet where the bounty hunters reside, to turn in Baby Yoda. So he is going to turn it in for the Beskar steel. We're a little bit disappointed in the Mandalorian. We thought he was a little bit better than that. But as he's turning in Baby Yoda, there's these little subtle details that show that he is very conflicted with turning in Baby Yoda. The stormtroopers get a little rough with the baby as they're carrying him in, telling him, hey, be careful with him. Just little subtle details like that. And as he turning them in and they take him away, he's like, what are you guys going to do with them? And obviously the Empire gets very defensive in that. They don't want to tell him. They're very secretive in their plans. We have no clue what they're planning on doing. So the Mandalorian ultimately backs down and takes the Beskar steel because he got a crap ton for completing this bounty, and then goes back to his covert of the Mandalorian tribe that he resides with. We did not know this in the beginning. We only saw one Mandalorian who looked to be the leader of the Mandalorian tribe. There is a crap ton of Mandalorians residing in what appears to be the sewers of this planet. They are all in hiding due to the Great Purge that occurred many years ago during the beginning of the Imperial reign. So one of the coolest things about this episode is seeing this Mandalorian covert. He goes down and he's walking by, and all the Mandalorians are looking up, checking him out because they see that he has a huge prize in his hand. We get to see all these Mandalorians. They're all decked out. They all have different armor. They're all like so sinister. And we get a lot more Mandalorian like way of life information in these in the few minutes that follow while he's in that in the sewer with them. So he sits down and talks with the Mandalorian leader and shows them his prize, his crap ton of Beskar steel. And basically, she's going to form him a full cuirass, which is a chess piece, with this steel. And she also makes some weapons called whistling birds, which you see later on in the show, which are the coolest weapons I've ever seen. During this conversation where he's getting his armor laid out, the other Mandalorians walk in and see that he has gotten more Beskar steel that was stamped with an Imperial insignia, indicating that it was smelted in an Imperial forge. And they're not happy about this. They really show that the other Mandalorians really look down on our Mandalorian for working with the Empire. And even though he's getting the Beskar steel back, they still look down upon him for doing this because the Empire basically made them go into hiding and took them from their homes. So during this conflict, we learned that the Mandalorians never take off their helmet. That is something that I did not know, and which is pretty insane if you think about it. Like how a lot of questions come to mind. How do they drink? How do they bathe? How do they eat? You know, things like that. But apparently they never take off their helmet. So there has to be some way that this all occurs, but it may just be something that we just have to leave up to our imagination. So during this conflict, this conversation with all the Mandalorians and talking about the Beskar steel from the Empire, the main dude that is taking conflict with this is known as the Heavy Infantry Mandalorian. And he is voiced by Jon Favreau, the director of The Mandalorian. I'm not sure if he actually plays him and is actually in the suit, but he does voice him. And during this conflict, the Heavy Infantry Mandalorian reaches for our Mandalorian's helmet. And this is a big no-no. And so this automatically starts them into a fight with with vibro blades, both in hand and both going at each other, until they are stopped by... They're not really stopped, but the leader kind of does like a speech and, and says, how is he a coward? He chose this life, which then indicates that the Mandalorian way of life is actually just chosen. It's kind of like a religion. You choose. You're not born into it. You can choose to join it at any time. And as we've seen through the first couple episodes with the Mandalorian's flashbacks, is that he was an orphan. He was taken from his home during the Clone Wars. The Separatist invasion destroyed his home, killed his parents apparently. And I guess eventually he was founded by the Mandalorians and became a foundling, and then now he's this bounty hunter that's a Mandalorian. So that was quite a bit of information shown in these few minutes during this conflict. And as they step back, we hear one of the most notable quotes of the episode as they talk about how they don't remove their helmets and how they've chosen this way of life and how they must give back to the foundlings. I guess their slogan for the Mandalorian way is, "This is the way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way."
And it's like the coolest thing ever. Like it's intense. Like sitting there watching it, I was just like, I have to say this all the time now. This is the way. So we go through the scene of the leader smelting the Mandalorian's armor. Every time that he gets a new piece of armor and smelting is being done and a hammer is being banged, he has flashbacks of the Separatist invasion of his hometown, which is how we come to the conclusion that in this episode they actually show battle droids in the town and his parents putting him in a cellar. And that's kind of all we get for him. So the leader crafts his armor. She mentions that she's going to make a cuirass and the whistling birds that we talked about. But it looks like she made a little bit more. She made another pauldron for him, as well as the cuirass. And he already had the helmet. And I'm not entirely sure if he got the greaves as well, because the greaves do look a little bit different in the next few scenes in his armor. But I'm fairly certain that he didn't get the greaves as well, because she did only mention doing the cuirass. During the conversation of the armor thing I left out, they talk about the Mudhorn that he killed, and they were going to use that as his signet for his armor. That's like the emblem that would go on his armor. But since it wasn't a noble kill because he was helped by Baby Yoda, he chose not to take that signet. So we're still waiting on him to earn his signet. So there could be something else that he kills that will be that. Or maybe it'll be a Baby Yoda signet. I want that. I'm going to make some armor and just do that. So he has his armor and he's going back into the cantina to get a new bounty. We can really tell with just his body language that the Mandalorian is very conflicted with what he's done with Baby Yoda. He's still asking about him. He asked the guild leader what the Empire plans to do with him. Obviously, the guild leader doesn't know because it is against guild policy for you to ask anything about the bounty once it's done. I think this is really important for the show itself, since this character is never actually seen other than in his armor. That we understand his body language and can see that he's conflicted about something. He's like upset about something. We can see that through his armor. And I think that just goes to show that they're doing an excellent job of storytelling here. Because, you know, usually we tell by facial expressions and things like that, but we're purely going off body language at this point with him being in full armor. And we just know that, like, he's really thinking about Baby Yoda. Like, he regrets what he's done. So he's trying to take his mind off of it. And so he goes to the guild leader to get a new bounty target. So he takes the one that's furthest away. He gets in his ship, and as he's about to leave, he's reminded of Baby Yoda taking off the ball on his joystick. I don't know what to call it, but it's like a joystick on his console. So he's reminded of Baby Yoda, and he pretty much just says, "F it, I'm going to get my Baby Yoda back." He leaves his ship. He goes and starts prepping, and he's doing some surveillance on the Imperial base where he took Baby Yoda, and he basically infiltrates it in what is one of the coolest scenes I've seen ever in an action movie or TV show, of him infiltrating this base, getting Baby Yoda out of it, and killing a bunch of stormtroopers very brutally, might I add, along the way. When he goes and finds Baby Yoda in this base, he sees that they have him strapped to a board and they are about to do an extraction of his blood. From this, we can assume that the Empire is trying to extract midi-chlorians from Baby Yoda, more than likely because it is a very strong Force user, as we've seen in earlier episodes. So more than likely they're going to extract midi-chlorians. We have no clue. It's all fan theory at this point. But this has to have something to do with the Emperor coming back and the Rise of Skywalker. There just has to be something that ties the show into this new movie. So the Mandalorian saves Baby Yoda before anything's done to him and gets him out of the facility. Another thing I want to add is that the doctor that is doing the extraction is defending Baby Yoda, saying that he hadn't done anything to him and he was trying to protect him. So I guess this guy was good and realizes that Baby Yoda is important, and maybe he's a defector of the Empire. We're not really sure. But another thing I want to add is that this doctor has a patch on his shoulder that is very similar and reminiscent of the Camino Cloners patch that you see on all the clones in episode 2. It's not identical, but it's been quite a number of years since we've seen the Camino cloning facility. The Empire shut it down, so no more clones would be made, but they still have control over it, so they probably adopted a new logo, so that's why it probably looks different. But that's why a lot of fan theories are out there that are saying that they're trying to clone Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda is already a clone or something along those lines. We just don't know yet. So basically the rest of the episode is the Mandalorian trying to escape the planet with Baby Yoda in tow. He kills all the stormtroopers on his way out. A very, very cool scene with him being surrounded by 5 or 6 stormtroopers and using the whistling birds finally. The Mandalorian leader did mention that there is a limited amount of whistling birds that he can use because those are from Beskar Steel. So he did use 5 or 6 in this thing, but it looks like he still has a lot more to be able to use in future episodes. So he escapes the Imperial base, basically killing every stormtrooper in his way. And then we cut to some scenes with the bounty hunters on this planet all receiving alerts to go kill the Mandalorian. So he's almost back to his ship when he's ambushed by basically every single bounty hunter on this planet. and a shootout ensues because he's not giving up Baby Yoda. It's so insane seeing this episode. It's just like what I grew up wanting to see in live action. The Mandalorian holds out, kills dozens of bounty hunters, all from within a wagon, all while protecting Baby Yoda. And just when things are looking bleak and it looks like they have him, his whole covert of Mandalorians come out of hiding and just performs the greatest scene in all Star Wars history and probably just media history for myself. We see Mandalorians coming down with jetpacks, blasting everything in sight. It's just the coolest effing thing that I've ever seen. I mean, it's just, I don't even know how to really explain like how cool it is. You just have to see it. Just seeing all the Mandalorians coming down. They're using their rockets. They're using their jetpacks. The heavy infantry Mandalorian who was giving our Mandalorian shit. They obviously all came to his aid because they're all brothers in arms. They're all part of the same clan. They see that the Mandalorian went back and did the right thing and went against the Empire. Now, he did break the bounty code, which is why he's in this mess in the first place, because he took his reward and then went back and took his bounty back. So, I mean, he did the right thing, but didn't do the right thing, but it's the Empire, so who cares? That's kind of where we're at. The Mandalorian tribe basically provides covering fire for him so he can get to his ship and get off planet. He gets on his ship and is ambushed once again by the guild leader for the bounty hunters, but is ultimately able to take him out. We think he's dead, but he actually had some Beskar steel on his chest and protected him from that blaster bolt that the Mandalorian shot into him. But the Mandalorian gets away, and we don't know where he's going, and that's basically the episode. It's easily the best episode so far, just because of the Mandalorians coming in and kicking everybody's ass. Just some things I want to reiterate. It is super cool how they're portraying this bounty hunter, this Mandalorian. We know his name is Din Djarin. He's an orphan who's lost his family, his home, in the Clone Wars from a separatist attack. So it's been quite a number of years. It wasn't the Empire that destroyed his home. It was the Separatists. So he probably joined up with the Mandalorians shortly thereafter. They took care of him, and he was a foundling and basically earned his way through the galaxy as a bounty hunter in the Outer Rim. The other thing is that I think the Mandalorian feels this attachment to Baby Yoda because he was uprooted from his home. He lost his home and was orphaned because of some imperial reign. Back then it was the Separatist army, then it was the Empire, and now it's the First Order, but they were trying to take this baby from his home, from his family, and that's what they did. So he's trying to correct that injustice because that's what happened to him. So I think that's super important. We saw a lot of Mandalorian lore here. We saw a lot of Mandalorian armor, new characters that will surely come back. Another cool scene at the end while he was leaving atmosphere was the heavy infantry Mandalorian somehow using a jetpack to keep up with his ship, coming up and saluting him Iron Man style. It was very reminiscent of Iron Man. The heavy infantry guy just looks like one of the beefier Iron Man suits, which was super cool. But yeah, they're doing a really good job of humanizing this character, and I've said that in my past 2 episodes, and they just continue to do so. He's a very lovable character. He is a very quiet character, but you can read a lot about him just from his body language, even with the armor on, which is just super important for this type of show. There's a lot of segments in the show where there's no talking, it's just action. This is one of those shows where there's just more stuff going on rather than a lot of dialogue. It's just very kind of quiet, which I like. I've also read some stuff, and I agree with it, that this show is very reminiscent of a video game, like an RPG. He's going on these fetch quests, like getting the bounty, getting the egg, getting his parts back, can leave, goes find a new planet, things like that, earns new armor, levels up, things like that. It's pretty cool. I think that's okay. I don't see any problem with that, and I don't think anybody else has a problem with that. It's just kind of one of those things that you kind of draw a conclusion to. But yeah, this show is so good. I don't have any problems with it. Usually, a show, I can at least point out some problems, but this is just Star Wars being Star Wars. This is what Star Wars needs to be, and I hope we see more TV shows. There's been an Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show announced, as well as a Darth Maul one. Not sure if those things will actually see the light of day, but we got a Mandalorian TV show, so surely those will happen too. And if they're anything like this show, they're gonna do super well. I'm more excited to see the rest of this season of The Mandalorian than I am to see the Rise of the Skywalkers. And that is the conclusion of like 50 years of Star Wars storytelling. So if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. But that's it. So hopefully I'm going to put out episode 4 shortly after the episode airs tomorrow. And looking forward to talking more to you guys about this show. I love it. I hope you guys love it too. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more of my videos. And let's talk about it down in the comments. We'll see you in the next one.